Hello, a very warm welcome to Fireside Chats. My name is Magla Pillay and today we are covering the subject of perseverance. In this series, we look at a variety of subjects dealing with spirituality. We look at what the core of spirituality is, how it impacts on your consciousness, and we ask you, the viewer, to ask yourself very personal questions like what your relationship with God is and how you can take your relationship with God to a whole new level. I would like to introduce you to our speaker, Sister Denise, who has been practicing Raj Yoga meditation for over 40 years. Sister Denise, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And a very warm welcome. Tell me, perseverance, what is it? How do you define it?
Well, I always call it the power to keep on going on. Because there are times in your life when you just feel that you can't go on and you're ready to give up. And I remember talking to some marathon runners who were telling me that, you know, in the marathon, it's the last 3 hours that are the hardest. And there's something about, calling upon those last ounces of strength within you that enable you to kind of cross a certain hump, and then you're home free. So in the spiritual practice, definitely there are times when you find that you need to call upon this power to keep on going on, this perseverance, because in many ways, you start something, you want to meditate a little bit, seems quite easy. It is quite easy in the early stages, and as you start getting into it, it brings up resistance, and you find that actually you need a lot of strength to actually be in there for the long haul, and that's when you realize the importance of the power of perseverance.
I once heard it described as stick-to-itiveness, which I thought was quite priceless. Sister Denise, why is perseverance a quality that every human being should strive to improve within themselves? Why is it necessary? And I'm asking you this question in this context. We start certain things, and then you come to a point in your life where you realize that this doesn't work for you anymore. You leave it and you start something else. When do you know whether to persevere in a course of action that you chose in the past, and when do you know give up? How are you able to make that distinction?
I think what happens is that people will opt, to persevere past a few signals which say, I can't do this is not the right thing. You do give it a good try, and then you have to really do an evaluation and see whether the reason why you entered into it in the first place is still current, is still valid. And that's very important, because those reasons why you might think, oh, it's too hard, I can't do it, I've changed my mind, they may be very different reasons. It may be because you're just unaware of what it takes to fulfill the ambition that you had. And I think it's inevitable, really, that you reach a point where you come to understand that you just never would have done it if you realized how difficult it was. But then on the other hand, you want to carry on. And so it's really about, okay, the reason why I did this in the first place, is it still current? Because if it is, then I'm going to stick to it. I like this expression, stick-to-itiveness. Because the reasons why you want to give up, in comparison with the reasons why you don't want to give up, they are, the lighter pan in the balance. And so this, remembering why are you doing this? I mean, in terms of a spiritual practice, it does happen to everyone. You know, can I carry on? Can I get to the next level? You know, it's a little bit like the system of education. You do your primary, you do your secondary, and you could stop, you know, and then you say, no, I think I want to go tertiary, and then you could stop that, and then I think, no, I'm going to do my master's, I'm going to do my doctoral, I'm going to do postdoctoral, I'm going to go for this. And so you have these moments where you could stop, and you have to calculate, okay, if I stop, then I can only get this much of a job, this much of a salary, whatever. You calculate it in economic terms, and then you see, well, what do you want? And this question, what do you want, is a really good one. It's a simple question, but it goes very deep. And if you answer that question with, I want to carry on, then that gives you, I think, the power to carry on, because you're clear to yourself that, yeah, this is what I want to do.
So Denise, you know, when I think about the quality of perseverance, which is a very beautiful quality, I am concerned not just with something that you embark on, like a project or a course of study or even a career choice, but it's about yourself, the spirit, okay? And it strikes me as an individual who's willing to use his energy in the upliftment of his own spirit. In that context, with that ambition, most of us are so damaged, and most of us have a sense of self-worth that is that you can scrape together in the palm of your one hand. Okay, how do you persevere if you have very little by way of internal resources?
I think there are many situations where you're really not just only on your own, and there are other people who sort of expect you to keep going on, and that's an energy that you can use. They see you as somebody who goes through to the end, so you say, well, if they think that I can, then I'm going to do it. Sometimes you might say, okay, even if I don't have that much self-worth and I could easily sort of go into that and betray myself by giving up, it's always optional. And you can always, you know, get an angle on it where you can see, no, I'm going to go for it. And sort of not really it having much to do with your self-worth, but maybe, you know, I want to, or I want to see if I can. I remember one time it happened with me. I was commissioned to write some books, and I hadn't written any books before, but I'd always thought, you know, yeah, I really would like to write a book, and I don't know how to write a book or whether I can or not, or this. And so this came up, and I said, okay, well, here it is. Now let me see if I can. And it ended up not being a book, but 10 books and a series. And I had help with it. I had people. I had expectations. I got interested in it. I did a lot of research and so on and so forth. And yes, there were many times in that process where, you know, you get to a point where you just can't go any further. It's just not working, and you just stick to it. And you get over that hump, and eventually everything got done and printed and published and whatnot. And then you look back and you think, yeah, no, it's there. It got done. I can never really truthfully say to myself, I can't do this, because I did it, you know. And I think that every time you accomplish something, it gives you a sense of accomplishment, and that sense of accomplishment gives you an extra force that enables you to go to the next thing, to improve on it, because you also get experience, you get expertise, you get a reputation, you get also a momentum. And this, I think, really contributes to your perseverance. In your own eyes, you start to get more stature, and this ultimately changes your sense of self-worth, because it's undeniable when there are actual accomplishments. Because if you say, well, I don't feel like I'm worth anything because I have nothing to show for it, but then you've got all these things to show for it, so you can't really, you know, play that game with yourself because it's there.
Is it, Denise, in the investment in one's energy in oneself, how do you bring in spirituality into this? Because there are people who are known for their perseverance power and the endurance power who are not spiritual at all. Is there a difference between perseverance and spiritual perseverance?
I think that, you know, perseverance is a very good quality, a very good virtue, and you know, you can persevere in a worldly way, no doubt, but it's still a spiritual quality, you know. Perseverance as a quality applied to an elevated goal is, you know, that much more special, that much more elevated, and what you receive as a result of that is that much greater. So, you know, you're making an investment in yourself, and it's really a test, you know, do I give up on myself or don't I? Because a person who doesn't give up on themselves, they are really transcending their limitations, their self-doubt and all of this. And so you are actually bringing yourself to a point where you can say, I made it, I'm victorious, and now what's next, you see. So it gives you that thing.
Sister Denise, in the context of spirituality, what does perseverance power mean? What aim do you have in your spiritual path, and how does perseverance take it further or keep you on the path?
You know what happens when you decide, okay, I'm going to walk the path of spirituality, there's a side of it where you're throwing down the gauntlet and challenging the force of negativity. And if it picks up that glove that you throw down and accepts the challenge,
you get punched in the face.
Well, if you give up, you lose, and you lose badly. And because this force of negativity will really take you. And I think it's quite important to realize that, okay, if I'm going to say I'm going to do this, it's really good for me. If I can really tell myself very strongly, I'm in it for the long haul, because if I don't, I have a very high price to pay. So that can also help you to stick to it, you know, because sometimes, I mean, I've even been in situations where almost like as a matter of survival, you have to get through the night. If you're very ill, you just know that if I can just get through the night, I'll be okay. But if I can't get through the night, I'll die. Something that you kind of feel inside. It's a similar sort of thing. If I can get through this to the other side of this dark part of the journey, I'm home free. So yeah, the journey of spirituality goes through many terrains, and you know, to just go into oneself and find those last ounces of strength is really good.
Sister Denise, there is something within the human psyche that is pretty resilient. Now, when it comes to perseverance, is it a belief in yourself that keeps you going? Or is it a belief in the goal that, or the end result, the zenith that keeps you going? Where do you get your motivation from to stay on the path that you've chosen?
To me, I think it's that you see that it's possible. I can. I can, therefore I will. It's not the goal that does it, it's the ability to do it that gets you to do it.
The ability to do it that gets you to do it.
You know, you look inside and you see, yeah, is this possible? Or I've even been in a situation where I'm in a really dangerous situation. I will call on God and say, okay, me and you, we're going to get through this. And you can work with that, and you can, you know, align yourself with God and take the strength of God. And I think, you know, there is one of the very interesting spiritual laws where God says, if the child takes a step of courage, then the Father is going to give 1,000 steps of help. So when you're at a point where what's required is perseverance, that is also a step of courage. And just saying, I'm going to do it anyway, you're invoking those 1,000 steps of help because you're doing it for a higher purpose, you know.
Sister Denise, you touched on this earlier, but I would like to take the subject up further because I think it's the greatest obstacle in achieving one's goal, whether you call yourself spiritual or not. Resistance in any path that you go on in terms of being upwardly mobile. You're faced with resistance. You're faced with internal resistance and you're faced with external resistance. Why is there resistance in the first place? Okay. And have you worked out a formula to flatten resistance and gain some muscle?
Of course there is resistance because the prize is very prized. You know, if you can make it, what you get is so desirable that there are many who would like to get it. There are many who embark upon this, but they do give up because there is a lot of resistance, there are obstacles and so on. But if you just stick with it and understand, obviously there will be resistance, and you resist the resistance and just make it through, you realize that it's an attitude, it's an approach. There's an expression that we have in the spiritual practice, being a destroyer of obstacles. So obstacles will come, and they come so that you can exercise your capacity to destroy them. Because if you can't destroy obstacles, you haven't taken all the exams, you haven't passed all the tests that are required to get to that end point. So when it's time for obstacles to come, for resistance to come, it comes, and you have to deal with it. And if you are naive and inexperienced, or you say, oh, I never thought it would be like this, well, it is like this. So now, you know, get with the program and do it. You know, so it's really a willingness to address whatever comes when it comes.
Willingness to address whatever comes when it comes. What does resistance, or rather overcoming resistance, do for you? You know, when you're in the gym training and you're doing weights, you develop muscles. So in that context, what does resistance do for you in terms of life? It can't possibly build muscles in the brain, but what does it do for you?
Well, it does build muscles in the soul.
Soul muscles.
Soul muscles.
Okay, I've now learned a new term, soul muscles. Tell us about soul muscles.
Well, there is such a thing as moral muscle or moral fiber.
Yes,
you know?
that I know, yes.
So it's a bit like that you just, you know, you keep resisting the resistance and you're building your strength, you're building your capacity. And if you don't have resistance, well, you can't. So resistance is required.
Yes, it is. God and the power of perseverance. Link those two for us.
God is called the Almighty, and God also is very discreet and knows that if I would show myself in my full power to my child, they would be scared to death and run away. So, but occasionally you can get a glimpse of the power that is contained in God. And if you also understand that you can have access to that, you make a relationship with God in such a way that he makes that power available to you, that gives you enormous possibilities. It really increases your capacity because it is there for you if you know how to take it. And when you get a glimpse of it, you know it's there. And if you can, feel worthy, which is an attitude towards the self, and say, okay, the power of God is available for me. God himself is available for me, so I'm going to take it. And I'm going to do this. And then at the end of it, you find that it worked out. So then your sense of what is, your sense of where you are, you're in a different place. And you in a way, it's like taking a big risk, because you're jumping into the great unknown. So it's a matter of just with faith taking a leap, and then you find, you land on solid ground. You're at the next level. That's a beautiful thing. But some people are too afraid to do it.
Sister Denise, it is well established that a vast majority of people have dysfunctional childhoods. And for many, you have parents or primary caregivers who let you know from a young age, you're worth nothing, you won't amount to anything, you're stupid, you're this, you're that, you're not as intelligent as your brother. Grow up and get married and get someone to look after you, because you're certainly not capable of doing it yourself. There's a host of negative messages that we receive. Children also receive a negative message with physical, sexual violence, verbal and emotional abuse. Now, as adults, we internalize this, and this could be a crippling part of your psyche that creates a wall of resistance in anything that you try to do as an adult. Many in the field of psychology regard this as being the reason for self-sabotage. The messages that we get as children. So how does one overcome that level of resistance where it is so deeply instilled in you that you're worth nothing, so don't even bother trying?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And everyone has their fair share of it. So I remember when people were telling me, you're really not intelligent. And I used to look inside and say, I don't think so.
You are aware that you're the exception.
Well, I thought, I think there's something wrong with these people.
Yeah, but most children think, it's my mom and dad saying this to me, so they must be right, and maybe I am stupid.
I was fortunately spared that, but what happened though is, having thought to myself, well, all these people who are telling me that I don't have any intelligence, or I'm slow, or I'm ugly, or whatever those things are, I would always go inside and see if I agree. And usually I thought, well, maybe I'm ugly, but I'm definitely not stupid. And, well, maybe I'm slower than these other people, but that's because I need to take time to consider all these books that I'm reading and so on. So I used to think, well, you know what, I'm different. I'm very, very different. So, okay, obviously you people can't understand me. So what it does in that situation is kind of you go into your own world and you develop that. And I think you can develop many skills by doing that, but you also become like a closed system, and so maybe that's not very good for your social skills, because any time you encounter these things, it definitely causes damage, and then you will fall back upon some coping mechanisms, and a lot of people will develop capacities that make them exceptional to cover over this thing, and they will be very successful in some areas, but then not in other areas. So it's very damaging, and it doesn't allow a person to grow in a balanced way. But I think that, all that being said, you do your best with what you have, and when you start to get access to spiritual truths which are, much greater than those damaging behaviors of ignorant people, you can do a lot of repairing and restoring, and when you make a relationship with God who is absolutely functional, you can actually refunctionalize some of the areas which had become dysfunctional through the connection with abusive people or dysfunctional family relationships. So it's possible. And then I think the actual meditation, where you draw power and you draw light, you're able to heal many of these areas. So it's survivable
And doable.
Mm.
Okay, you have given the audience a lot of food for thought, so thank you for that. There you go, brothers and sisters, the subject of perseverance. Sister Denise has shared from her wealth of spiritual experience what it means to have perseverance, and it is a very beautiful quality to have if you've chosen any path of self-improvement, whether it's your career, whether it's family life, whether it is a spiritual path. You have to know that you are worth it in order to stay on the path and achieve success. It's very easy to give up at any point in time, but I think the deepest message that Sister Denise shared is you are worth it, and you need not draw only on your own resources. She also advised how one can hold the hand of God during your journey. So I wish you luck in the perseverance department. We all need it, irrespective of the paths that we have chosen. So thank you and goodbye.